Okay, so after you've gone to the paint and you've gotten your paint, you want to make sure that you have your brushes too. So when I paint, I usually have a wide brush and I have a medium-sized brush and maybe another smaller brush on hand too. So you want to have a few brushes to choose from because each brush kind of has a specific job. So you do also want to make sure that you have three of your circles filled with white, and you're only putting about one squirt of white in each one, and then the other three circles are black, um, and lastly you have one circle that's blue. So here's what I'm doing. I'm starting to add a drop of black, just a really tiny bit of black into your white. If you get too much black in there, the black will take over, so you just want a tiniest bit for that first value, which is a really, really pale shade of gray. And you'll see there's like a water cup handy. That's where I rinse my brush off. And then off to the side, I have a paper towel, and I'm wiping my brush on the paper towel, so I try and take off some of the paint off my brush. So here I'm grabbing a little bit more black because the second shade of gray is going to be a degree or two darker. So I'm trying to get a range. And you are all going to start out with gray. You're going to add color to it, but it's going to initially be 4 colors of gray, if not more. So you can see it's starting to darken it up. I'm adding more black, so the mixture is a darker shade. And the thing about the pigment is you can grab some of that paint like I'm doing right there, and you can transfer it with your brush and kind of shovel it into another circle. So there I'm grabbing a large portion of black because you want to amp up that black as you darken your gray. And I actually made 5 values here. So that's the 5th value. Is that black with a little hint of white from my brush. So now I'm wiping my brush. There's a paper towel. Now I'm going to go ahead and add a little bit of blue to each one. Wow, okay, maybe I'm still mixing. It is important that you mix all the way, that you don't have any swirls of other color in there, that you want it to be consistent. Okay, so now I'm adding that little bit of blue to each one. So I'm going to mix that into the white to make for like a pale bluish gray. And it's better to start off with small amounts of blue or whatever color you're adding to it rather than a large part, because you don't want that color to take over. There are certain colors that will dominate other colors, like if you use red, red tends to go a long way. The ultramarine blue is not one of those colors, so you'll see I add quite a bit of it to get it to turn. So each one you're adding blue to try and get it to change to read as a blue gray. And like I said, you can use any color. If you wanted to get like the green of the forest, that would be fine too. And I fast forwarded it. So that's on time lapse. You can see me mixing. And it's kind of hard to see on this camera, but it is starting to turn blue. And you can see I'm just like shoveling it into the next one, trying to get it to look more of a blue-gray. And there's that steel gray with the blue in it. And then we'll have like the blue black, which is kind of like a navy color. And you can see like I have my paper towel in one hand. I keep wiping off my brush when it has too much paint on it with that paper towel. Be careful where you set the paper towels down though. If you set it down on the table, whatever paint's on that paper towel will transfer to the tabletop. And that's not good. So that's the basic palette. That's what you're going to mix before you even paint. And now I'm going to show you a couple of painting techniques that can help you. These are just ways to create a paint stroke. So every time you make a mark with a paintbrush, it's called a stroke. And I use the side of the bowl to wipe on if I have too much water on there. If I feel like there's too much liquid. So that same brush can make both a fat, wide line, and it can also make a skinny line if you drag it sideways. You can challenge yourself. See how thin you can get with a pretty wide brush. I mean, that brush is about 1 inch wide. When you're blocking in or massing in color, you would try and go in a big, bold brush stroke. So you could either go side to side, or you can see what I'm doing right there is I'm doing kind of an X formation where I'll just rotate the brush. So I'll actually twist my hand and rotate and change up the direction. That helps to blend it in. I'm about to switch values, so when I did that, I actually rinsed my brush off a little bit, wiped it with the paper towel, and then went to the other value. You want to make sure that you don't have too much water on your brush. It's actually better to have your brush a little bit dry than to have too much, because it'll dry. If you have too much water, it'll dry and it'll be kind of transparent when you're finished. If that happens, you have to put a second coat on. So this is what happens when two edges meet, and you can make it look like a hard edge, or you can kind of soften it. If you soften it, you have to get both the dark and the light wet at the same time to blend the two together. But that's how, like, for instance, you can make the sky and the earth meet. A horizon line would look something like that. Here's a smaller brush, so that's what it looks like at its widest. And I'm just practicing to see how narrow how skinny I can go with my line. And I'm kind of playing with that concept. I'm trying to get the idea of foliage of a branch going on there. So a short stroke will look different than a long stroke. And you can get quite a lot of detail out of a mid-sized brush. That brush is on the smaller size side. So I'm starting to paint in between the branches. So you can see how to paint in between. I work from dark to light primarily. So I usually paint the dark stuff in first and then I fill in the light. So I'm painting in between those branches, which is kind of tricky. You just have to kind of twist and turn your brush. I use the skinny side to get a precise line. I use the wide side to kind of fill out or block in an area. And if you do overlap some of your like if you're like the tree, if you overlap that with some of your lighter colors, it's not that big of a deal. You can wait till it dries and you can go back in and touch it up later. So now I'm starting to do a gradient. So that's where you mix, where you have And I'm putting a multiple amount of values, and you're trying to blend them together so that there's like a smooth shift from one value to another. And you don't want to leave any. So you'll see this in the sky. Like in the sky, there's usually some kind of gradient where it's lightest at the horizon line, and as white areas tilt up, it starts to get darker and darker. So if you go outside and lay on your back, the sky, when you look up, is actually much darker than the sky that's closest to the horizon line. All right, now here's the cleanup part. So when you're all done, you have this icky mess. And the thing about acrylic is if it dries, it stays put. So you've got to clean it out immediately. Watch that you don't turn on the tap water too strongly, because it'll blast you and it'll blast the wall behind you and your clothing. So you want to take a sponge like this, and you want to scrub out each of those little ones. Actually, before you even do that, you take a paper towel and you wipe out any excess paint so that we don't pour a ton of acrylic paint down the drain, because that's how you clog a drain. So you're scrubbing each little individual palette. Your goal is to get the palette white again. You shouldn't have any paint on there, even on the top or on the rim. You want to clean it all out. So you want it as clean as you can be. You're going to flip it to the back and do the same thing to the back, because oftentimes there'll be a little bit of paint that gets stuck to the back, or your fingers transfer paint. So you're going to make sure it's perfectly clean. Double check it. Wash your own hands. So that's pretty darn good. And I just found one little spot. So it can be tricky when you're using a lighter value, but that's how clean it should be. It should look just like it did before. You have to do the same thing with the brushes. I use the palm of my hand to wipe on, and then I run them with water. I put a little bit of soap on my hand, and I do the same thing. So you want to, first of all, clean the brushes until they wash clear in the water. Then you do the same thing with soap. So that take that little puddle of soap in your hands, wash them with the soap, and then do that again. Rinse them. You also want to shape each brush. So what I'm doing right there is I'm kind of like shaping it back into the original point. If you don't do that, the brush hairs will start to splay out. So they look like that. All done.